How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. All righty, guys. Welcome to the Bait Tank Podcast. Today we have a fantastic guest, a legend in the game, you could say. Everybody knows him. I guarantee you've seen some of his videos online. We have Captain Dave Hansen with Your Saltwater Guide. How's it going, Dave?
Good, Drew. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be on here.
No, of course. And thank you for having me on your show. I had a great time. A lot of engagement with your crew, and it's transcended over to my crew. So this is a good thing we got going here.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's up to us to keep this fishing thing going. And anybody I see that's trying to do something like what you're doing, or Phil Freeman, or anybody, I'm the first one to jump in and help you guys, because we got to keep this fishing thing open for our children.
Yeah, and I think a lot of your message goes back to that. Keeping fishing alive, keeping it going, getting kids involved, and I support that 100%.
Thank you very much. So do I. It's super important. If we don't, we're going to wake up one day and be living on a planet where I can't go catch bass on the breakwall with you. How tragic is that going to be?
It'd be pretty devastating, and California would like that very much.
It's the strangest thing. I don't understand it, but yep.
Before we get in, I do want to touch on closures and CCA and all that stuff, but I really want to get into your story because I think it's very interesting. I mean, you were just 100% brought up in this world, so let's start from the very beginning of Dave Hansen and diapers here.
Yeah, okay. It all started on the end of the San Clemente Pier when I was 3 years old. My dad, I'm 63 now, so 60 years ago. It started on the end of the San Clemente Pier. My father, he was the Don of sport fishing. He started off on the San Clemente Pier in 1947. And so I grew up really in the industry. My whole life's been sport fishing. That's every part of it. My dad, like I said, in 1947, he used to cart fish off the end of the San Clemente Pier for 25 cents a wagon load. Back when the pier was much longer, and the guys would come in with big gunny sacks full of fish, and they'd have to carry them to their car. And my dad saw that and thought, if I bring my wagon, I can help them and drag those fish down the end of the pier with them. And that's how my family got started in the sport fishing industry. Very, very strange way to start, but that's the way we started. And then 1964, I remember my mom putting my shoes on the counter in our house to take me down to where my dad worked. And all I knew is my dad was a captain, because it said Captain Don on his shirt. And my mom used to show it to me all the time, but I didn't know anything about that. But I remember getting down on the end of the San Clemente Pier, and my mom and my dad were the only people that could drive their cars on the San Clemente Pier back then. And my mom drove us out to the end of the San Clemente Pier. I got out of the car with her, and I remember her holding me and my dad on the sum fund backed into the end of the San Clemente Pier, and I'm looking at him because the wheelhouse is at the level of the pier, and he's talking to his son. And I was so excited. I had no idea that what was about to happen, but I got to go on the afternoon half-day boat with my dad, and that was it. From that day forward, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a fisherman like my dad. I wanted to take people out fishing. And I started out in the office cleaning the fishing poles for the rental rods when the boats would come in. When I was 13 years old, that's what I started out. Every afternoon after school, my mom would pick us up and take us down to the office at Dana Point, because we moved to Dana Point Harbor in 1971 when the harbor was completed. We had the biggest operation in San Clemente at the time, the biggest business. And the city of San Clemente told my dad, please don't leave, don't take the boats and go to Dana Point. And he was like, if I don't take the Dana Point concession, they're going to put us out of business. So,
wow, so that was when the harbor was built.
Yeah, we were the very first business in the harbor. We're still there. We have 9 sport fishing boats between the old Waterman's, John's Fish Market and the Wind and Sea Restaurant. All those docks there, those are all my family's docks. My dad's held the lease on them since 71. My sister just renewed the lease, so we're going to be there for a while. So when people say, and I read about it on social media all the time with all my videos and everything, when they say, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or this guy just got in the industry. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I haven't been doing it as long as they have. I started working in the industry in '74, so I'm pretty new. And I'm just trying to get a foothold in here and try to establish myself. But what I did, what no one else had ever done, was here I am at 63 years old. I'm what they call now an influencer, which is pretty crazy. I never would have thought. My dad would have never. We didn't even know anything about anything. We just wanted to go fishing.
Yeah.
And then I started working on the boats in 1976, 77 on the Fury out of Dana Wharf, fishing San Clemente Island every day but Mondays. As a 15-year-old kid, that was a very gnarly grind. I look at these kids today, Drew, and they're so tired when they wake up. And we didn't even have a chance to be tired. You left the dock at midnight. Ooh. And so you had to get ready, probably start getting the boat ready at 10:30, 11, get the people on at 11:30, leave the dock, go to the bait barge, get bait, then drive 5 hours to San Clemente Island. That's when you got to sleep, 2 or 3 hours, if you were lucky. And in those days, everybody did watch. So the whole crew did watch, and the 2 captains did. They drove the boat to San Clemente Island. Then as the crew, we did deck watches every hour. We would get 2 hours of sleep and then 2 hours of deck watch. It was just a gnarly way to grow up as a little kid. It was just gnarly. And then scrub the boat on the way home after you caught. Back in those days, everybody went to San Clemente Island to catch calico bass. Nobody went there for bluefin or yellowtail, or it was calico bass. People got on the boat, Drew, back then, and all they wanted was the bull bass. That was like the thing. You read about it in the Western Outdoor News. You saw it there used to be old-time TV shows, and everyone went to San Clemente Island to catch bull bass. If we got 10 or 12 yellowtail on a trip, that was like highlight. That was super. No one could believe you caught them, but everybody went to catch those big 5, 6, 10-pound calico bass that lived in San Clemente Island. We didn't have the problems we have today. You didn't have 10 sea lions on every spot. San Clemente Island was just incredible. The place was just absolutely just thriving with fish. When you take those marine mammals out of the picture, it's amazing how many fish you could catch. And it would happen today if we didn't have the California sea lion. There's still plenty of fish. The fish aren't the problem. It's that California sea lion. I'm sorry, I got off on a little tangent.
No worries. And was it the same style of fishing? Kind of talk about the early stages. I mean, that was kind of early stage cattle boat style fishing, charter boat style fishing. What does a day look like on that?
Well, what I remember is when they brought out the first, what we call rubber lure, you guys call plastic. It was a salty dog. And I don't know if you've ever seen one. They're as hard as a rock. There's 0.0 movement. It is as hard as a rock. And it had a lead head on it. Either that or you had a bomber, which was a green toilet brush bristles on a hook, on a lead head. That's basically what it was. Those were your 2 options back then. And you put a squid head on it and threw it out there, and you just annihilated the bass. Just annihilated them. They just never had seen anything. Or you didn't have to have a piece of... Some days you just had to throw it in the water. And I remember when they first started using trash bags for our trash can liners. We never had trash can liners. And when the first plastic trash can liners came out, I remember guys would hook them on a hook, tear a piece of the trash can liner off, put it on a hook. And this was mid-60s, early 70s. And it would go out there and it would just sink through the water, that piece of plastic on a hook. And you would get just nailed by big calicos and white sea bass and barracuda because they didn't see anything. So that was the very beginning of lure fishing for us as sport boat operators. And then the big change was the scampi. Mm-hmm. When the scampi came into the scene, oh my gosh, the fishing was incredible. It was absolutely insane. Sand bass fishing when they spawn in the mud, in the flats. We used to catch them on the bomber rig or on the salty dog. But when the scampi came into play, It was easy for everybody. All the rental rodders, everybody. All you did was drop it down, straight down, and those little spin tails would spin on the way down. They'd get to the bottom, you'd wind it back up, they'd spin on the way up. In that process, either dropping it down or winding it up, you'd catch a big sand bass.
Wow.
It was some of the most funnest fishing, but it was really cool to watch it evolve. And then we'd take those scampies over to San Clemente Island. And if you could cast, oh my gosh, it was insane. But we didn't have what you guys have today. We had the fishing poles back then were sabers, and they were fiberglass, no fiberglass composite. They were heavy compared to what we're touching today. But you had Penn reels, period. That was it. Nobody had any other kind of reels. But then you could get like a level wind Abu Garcia that had no castability because that level wind didn't track very easy. It was all... So those of us that knew how to fish, we wouldn't use the ambassador style reel because of the castability of the level wind would slow it down. You couldn't cast. So you had a Squitter Junior, a 146, and back in the day when I first started, you had a plastic spool or a metal spool. There was no aluminum. There was nothing light about it. Here's what would happen. The metal spool, the reel would handle much better when we'd hook a bigger fish like a yellow or a bluefin. The reel could handle it with the metal spool, but you couldn't cast the metal spool. So you would pull a bunch of line off, throw it on the deck, grab your anchovy, and then throw it as far as you could, and then grab your reel. Or you could take a plastic spool. Now you could cast that a mile, not compared to today's reels, but for what we were doing, you could cast it pretty good. You have a 196.7 bait rod, and you could cast it pretty far. Then if you hook something of decent size halfway through the battle, the reel would explode because the plastic spool would expand from the heat and then pop the side plates off. I did that a billion times.
Because that drag washer was up against that spool, right?
The what?
Your drag washer was up against that spool?
Yes.
So it would just get too hot?
And then your line, if you didn't put the line on, like what we would do, we started to play with things, you would put Dacron underneath the monofilament. We didn't have any braided line. You either had Dacron or you had monofilament. So you'd put some Dacron on the spool soft, not pack it on, put it soft so that the monofilament could absorb into that, give you a little bit more time before the reel would blow up. That's kind of the ways we got around it. Then what would happen when you're casting, we were using 12 or 15 pound monofilament back then. It would go behind the spool. Between the spool and the side plate, the line would get in there and get kinked inside there. So then we would take our mom's nail polish and coat the edge of the spool to stop the line from going inside of it. And I'm not kidding. There's a bunch of guys my age that are listening to this, and they all remember it vividly.
That's hilarious.
You would look, and you guys would go, oh, your mom only had pink nail polish today. And you're like, yeah, any color she had, that's what I'm coating on there. And that was how you get around the spool eating your line. But all we had was mono. Today, oh my gosh, I remember when Shimano first came out with the first level winds that you could cast. And that was an incredible time. It changed everything.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, the gear has evolved so much since then, but there was like a turning point when it went from, hey, there's just this, to all these options on the market. Now it's like, yeah, everyone makes a really good product. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the reels today are nothing like the reels back when if you showed up on, there's a ton of people that watch us back east and in Texas, and I'm not taking anything away from you guys with your spinning rods and reels. That is how you learned how to fish, and that is the way you fish. And there's nothing, my way isn't better than your way, and your way is not better than my way. It's just your way, or it's just my way. But for those of us that know how to, and you and I talked about this on my podcast, you love to throw the popper on the spinning reel.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to hold it. I don't even know how to hold it. I can throw the popper on the conventional reel and pop it and get those two cranks with the line on tight, but nobody, if you don't know how to use a conventional reel, every time you take those two cranks like you and I talked about, the line goes on there loose, you go back to cast the next time, it's a giant mess. We both tell all of our clients or members or whatever, use a spinning rod. Because the day we take you, that's not the day to practice how to cast a conventional. It's the day to kill the fish. That's why we're there. We're there to actually catch fish, take them home, and eat them. So you're not a criminal if you do that. And you're not right if you use a conventional, and you're not wrong if you use a spinner. That's just, you got to be able to cast. Castability is everything in fishing. I don't care where you are, fly fishing or fishing for snook in the mangroves or fishing for bluefin tuna on big foamers. It's all about castability and being able to hit that spot over and over again. And with the technology and the reels today, oh my gosh, it's so much better and so much easier. I learned how to cast with a Surfmaster. You know what that is? 1-to-1 gear ratio, big giant bulky reel. That's what they had on all the rent rods out of off the San Clemente Pier, and that's how we learned how to cast. And we stood in the backyard because my dad wouldn't let us practice on the boat. That's not where you practice. I've been told that since I was little. You don't practice on the boat. When I take you on the boat, that's time to catch, not practice. You practice in the backyard, son. And I would stand in the backyard and cry because I had such big backlashes.
I'm still crying when I get a backlash. Now, one thing I think that you push that's great information and maybe can shift the mindset for people is, your day on the water, your time on the water of actually fishing is very limited. By the time you load the boat up, get out there, set up on a spot, you finally get a spot to go and it's biting, you better capitalize. That's not the time to eat your sandwich. It's not the time to, fire up the barbecue, whatever it may be. But a lot of, you see a lot of guys not capitalize when they really need to capitalize. Like your window, your 12-hour day, your window of fishing is 2 hours some days. You know what I mean? So when you actually have a chance to catch a fish. So people who really capitalize on that do catch the most fish.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I keep saying, and I say it on a lot of my videos, the time that you get to go, Drew, is not the time to practice. You should have practiced before you got there, because you've seen it many times where that window of that bite, especially if you're offshore doing that bluefin thing, that window
it's
of
10 minutes some
is
days.
so tiny.
Yeah.
It's just so, you spend all day in the gyros just staring at water, and then you finally get there and you got two guys on the bow and you're driving into the foamer and one guy just blows the cast and the popper slams down in the water like that, and every bluefin for 100 miles goes the opposite way, and you're like,
well,
dude,
there it goes.
You told me you've been practicing. You told me you had this. Dude, you just blew it for all of us. Now we're back in the gyros again, staring at water, waiting for this to happen again. And it might not happen again. So, yeah, don't practice on the day you go. And if you're not proficient at casting, get off the bow and wait till the boat slides into the school and then pull off the line and drop your lure in the water. That doesn't work, but at least you're not going to mess it up for us.
Now, I think, especially on the private boat sector, being a team player, hey, if you're not the guy to go cast, don't be the first to run up there and do it. Or, what I mean? If you have your brand new jig stick and you pull up on a foamer, don't try and go fight everybody up there that's maybe knows exactly what, you'll get your spot in the rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that's really funny too is when you see them all run to the bow when we're sliding on a kelp patty.
Yeah.
And they all run to the bow to cast. I saw me do this yesterday. I'm going to put the boat right on it. All of those jigs that are flying through the air and slapping the water, let's just say there's only a handful of Dorado or a handful of yellows on the thing, just a handful, like 5 or 6. If you wait till we get there and slide in on it, we've got a pretty good chance we're going to get all 5 of them. But if 10 lures go flying through the air and all slap the water before I get there, and a lot of people will cast straight off the bow, Drew, and you've seen it. We're driving, and they cast straight off the bow, and their lure hits the water, and we drive right over the top of it. And then they get mad because I drove over the top. The only thing I'm trying to do is figure out how I'm going to put the boat, and the boats I'm driving are a little bit bigger than than the boats you're fishing bass on, 65, 70, 80, 90 feet long. We're trying to figure out how to stop in a position that we're going to actually get to drift up onto the patty. I'm not looking at you guys all throwing lures off the bat. First of all, I've told you 800 times, please don't do that. Wait till we get there so everybody can have a chance to fish instead of that one guy with the lure that doesn't know how to cast, but he's going to be up there just like you said. And it's just on a sport boat, you guys, as captains of sport boats, that part just drives us flipping crazy, drives us mad. And those of you that are really good at it, you go up there to the bow, you're not helping because now you drag 4 or 5 people that have no idea what they're doing up there to make a giant mess. And by the time we stop on the kelp, those 4 or 5 guys that don't know what they're doing, they're all tangled up in a big tangle underneath the boat. And now they've got other people in the tangle. So you just need to wait. We're going to put the whole boat on the patty. We've already looked at it with the sonar. We know what's under it. We know what's there. Let us park the boat before y'all zing the iron. I'm sorry. I got off on a tangent.
No, it's all right. It's all right. You're saying you're running to San Clemente Island. Was coastal fishing not great then? Or why was everyone going to San Clemente Island?
For those bull bass. Fishing on the coast was epic. Fishing on the coast was wonderful. But there was a bazillion short bass. And we only had anchovies for bait back then. Remember that. So in order to catch a bull bass, you went over to Clemente, you had some brown bait or some mackerel. Or
explain brown bait, because it's not really a thing anymore.
Well, back in the day when the bait boats used to fish anchovies, they used to fish very shallow water for the anchovies. A lot of the, like LA Harbor Bait Company, fished inside the harbor a lot. That's why we had a lot of pinheads back in the day. The bait boats would fish in the surf line from, say, Newport to San Diego. A lot of times they would make their sets right outside the breakers. Wow. And that would be that smaller anchovy, but there would be herring, these little brown fish called herring, or these little, really, the better ones were the tomcod. If you could get the tomcod, they were really hardy, or what we call brown bait, the herring. They weren't as hard. They call it a queenfish if you look it up, gang. The queenfish and the tomcod were predominantly our brown bait. And then sometimes we get these little weird silver dollar looking fish. They called them pompano in the bait. But if you had any of that stuff, then you were guaranteed a 14, 15-inch calico, because the 12 inchers couldn't eat it. They just couldn't get their mouth around it. And if you had a tank of brown bait, you were golden. We started using live mackerel, and everyone would leave at midnight. We would leave at 10. So we would have 2 hours in the dark over there fishing mackerel for bait when I was working for a guy named Mike Thompson on the Patrician. And then it changed the whole thing. When you're lobbing a half a pound mackerel in that kelp, in the edge of the kelp, or up on a boiler rock, now it's all 5 pound plus fish. A lot of 10 pounders back then would rain on the boat. We didn't even think about, oh my God, this is a lifetime fish. No, because there's 4 of them right behind it coming on the boat.
Wow.
These kind of things like brown bait fishing, mackerel fishing, you can't even do it anymore at San Clemente Island. Because why? The California sea lion. Yeah. You throw that big live bait in the water, it's going to get woofed by a sea lion so fast. So that takes that part of the game away, which is very tragic, because I had a big, large clientele back in the late 80s, early 90s that just wanted to go with me to San Clemente Island to fish the live mackerel. It was like, that's what you came on the boat for. No one had ever heard of it before. Fishing 80-pound monofilament and casting a bait casting a mackerel right into the boiler rocks, and the drag on your 6-aught. All we had was Penn reels still, so
yeah.
Back then you had your red 6-aught that had 3-to-1 gear ratio, and you'd hammer down the drag 80-pound monofilament. It's like fishing with a rubber band compared to what we use now. I can't even touch mono, and I grew up mono. But now it feels like you're using a rubber band. You can't even feel the bite. When you go to set the hook, you have to make like 30 cranks just to get tight, and then set the hook. Where braid, you make a half a turn, you're tight as can be, and then you're whaling on them. But calico bass fishing, for me, There's nothing better. That's what I'd rather fish for than any other fish. If I have a day to go fishing, I'd love to come up and fish the breakwall with you or go fish San Clemente Island, boiler rock fishing. Unfortunately, I can't do it anymore because of the California sea lion, so that leaves a lot of fish over there that are just getting ginormous. And you guys that fish plastics, and you're not going to catch those fish. Those fish are on the front side of Clemente, and they're living in the rock. The presentation of your bait going by there as a plastic lure fisherman, it's not going to be in that zone. These guys are living in these little crevices, and then they're looking up, and they're like 8-10 pounder. They're not reacting to that plastic. And Jimmy Decker will tell you, we can go there side by side. I can fling a mackerel in that crack. He can throw his plastic in there 30 times. That fish won't come out. My greenback mackerel's right above him, and the tail's fluttering. I got it hooked in the butt, and I'm holding my rod up high, and the mackerel's doing all this noise right there. That fish comes out of that eelgrass, explodes on it, and then you're like, I didn't even know it was there. And I see Jimmy, and I see Benny, and I see Eric, those guys pound that front side of the island. They want to get to the backside, backside, that kelp forest, that thing, or back on the west end or the east end. Those kelp forests, those are golden. That's perfect plastic fish. But when you get to those boiler rocks on the front side of Clemente, those fish react only to bait. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe you guys are catching lots of 8 and 9 pounders. You're just not showing anybody. I don't know why, but I would show everybody if I caught them on the plastics. But maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But from years and years of observing, that's what I've witnessed. But maybe I'm totally wrong. I could take you there and you could catch them.
Well, we might have to do a side by side because I really don't think you don't really have any experience. So exactly. I think you're talking here. Exactly. No, I agree. I mean, even just like diving, you see those big bass up in the cracks, and our presentation has switched up a lot as being I'd say an artificial calico bass fisherman. I mean, I saw it go from like leadhead swim bait, then it went to the weedless, and now it's constantly progressing, but a lot of that cast is going for a reaction bite. I mean, I'm throwing a 8-inch weedless bait, which is essentially same size as a mackerel, onto the shoreline if I can reach it, and just burning it back, trying to get that reaction bite where a live mackerel I guarantee would set those fish off if they're in there.
Oh, absolutely. Plus the time that your bait, your plastic or your crankbait, or the time that it's in the zone is split second.
Yeah.
It's a split second. And most of those fish are big and lazy, and that on the front side of the island, the water's super warm and very, very clear.
Yeah.
So they're seeing everything. They're seeing all the stuff. And if you blow your first cast, the second cast, he ain't going to eat it anyway. You already ruined that spot. But if you can lob a mackerel in there, hook it in the butt, hold your tip up high, and then make him swim into all those nooks and crannies, it's pretty spectacular. It's a beautiful blow up when you see that 8-10 pound calico blow up on your half a pound mackerel. Ooh, it's so fun.
Now, I think fishing mackerel is underrated in Southern California for sure. I mean, I do it a lot on foamers, where a lot of guys are just like, oh no, it's got to be a popper, it's got to be a stick bait. I mean, you butt hook fly line a mackerel, you can fish 100 pound, you can fish 80 pound, and if you get it in the foamer, it's almost the same thing as a bass. Like if you cast 20 feet away, you're not going to get a bite, but if you get it in that foamer, it's an instant bite.
Oh yeah. I told a lot of people back in 2015 when that bluefin first showed up, that's what we were fishing them with. Because we went old school. We were going back, and I was like, oh my gosh. Run back into the harbor. I had 200 mackerel in my receiver at the dock, and we'd fill up the tank, and we'd go out there and fish straight 100 pound. And you'd hang 3 or 4 at a time when you'd slid into there. But you get bit off all the time. On those big foamers, when that stuff first showed up, you'd hook a fish, and it would go zzz, 100 miles an hour through the middle of the foamer as it's hooked up, and then you'd have nothing. Because all the other fish in there, they're biting that anchovy, so it's like a bunch of pairs of scissors. It's just going, and then they would just bite right through your braid. So what we figured out is we would cast our mackerel in there, we'd let it run, get bit, set the hook one time, then throw it in free spool. Dump it in free spool and just let them free swim and get out of the group. Once he got out of the, and when they got that hook in their belly or their face, they're not hanging out. They are trying to get that out of their face. So they're swimming as fast as they can and shaking their head. We just dump it in free spool, let them swim out of the group, then put it back in gear and go, okay, now I can get them out of here. And that's how we got away from that. But yeah, you throw a mackerel in a foam or a bluefin, you're in. But here's the problem, Drew. You and I talked about this on my podcast. 99% of the people don't know how to cast.
Well, I mean, it's an exciting experience getting the opportunity to cast into breaking fish is, out of your fishing day. That could be literally a 5-minute window combined throughout the day if you're actually making that cast. So it is hard to really take a breath, calm down, and cast in there. I mean, I get it. I told you I have Colt Snipers in orbit still. I have mackerel that I've launched on the other side of the foamer, and you see one, crash on it. It's difficult. I think that's why like a kite presentation, something where you're slowed down, you're far enough away from the fish, your bait's in the fish, you're not worried about casting into it, you're deploying it properly, which comes with its own struggles. I think that's a great option as well. And then if you hook that bigger fish, you're not on 80-pound braid and a Tranks 500 or something like that, where you're 5 hours deep and then it pops off at color because you're just yanking on it too hard. So
yeah, you wore a great big hole in his face.
Yeah, exactly. Your life as a captain, how did you transition from sport boats to kind of the private sector, maybe, working for an owner? What was that transition like, and why'd you get out of the sport boat game?
Well, as my father and I, like all of you that are out there listening, I'm sure that have worked with your family at one time or the other, I am a very strong-willed, strong-minded human. My father, 10 times stronger-willed, stronger human being. The clash was incredible. We would clash all the time. We both had phenomenal ideas, but first of all, he's my father. Second of all, he's my boss. So that was always just conflict all the time with us. So we made a conscious decision, the two of us, to part our ways back in '92, and from '92 on, I was my own deal. I haven't been part of the family business since 1992, and I started running sport boats up in Newport, working at Davies Locker, running the California Dawn, running the Freelance, doing some second operator trips on the Thunderbird, and started just looking around. I was like a one-trick pony, Dana Point. That was where I grew up. And then all of a sudden, I had an epiphany one day. We used to think everybody followed us because they were, I'm sorry, but idiots. You're following us because you're an idiot. And then I thought, you know what? You can't own a boat and be an idiot. You got to be kind of smart about something in order to gather enough money to get a boat. So I'm like, what's the missing ingredient here? There's no one teaching. There wasn't anywhere to go. There was nowhere to go. So Danny Jackson and I, back in 1989, 1990, we did a series of videos, hotspot videos, and we made them on VHS tape. Joe Berrien from Bongos, and myself, and Don Brockman, and Pete Gray, and a handful of other guys. We put together this plethora of videos that were on VHS tape of where to fish in Southern California. At the exact same time that we did that, Mark Wish came out with his book on all the spots. So all the GPS numbers that you guys see today on those plastic laminated charts, they either came from our VHS tapes or Mark Wish's book. And then
Mark Wish's book, is that Into the Gray, or what book is that?
6 fathoms, 6 feet to 6 fathoms or something. I can't remember the exact name of the book, but in the back of the book he has all the GPS numbers in it.
Wow.
For everywhere, which was phenomenal at the time. But
did you catch some hate for that at the time?
That made him and I the most hated people in the industry by far. Nobody. There's a guy named Billy Kay I don't know if you know Billy, but he started taking some of the hate from me like 3 or 4 years ago, and it really, I want all the hate. I own it. It's mine. I'm the original, and I love the hate. The hate has done nothing but buy me cars and houses, and taking care of my kids and sent them to schools and bought us good food. The haters are the best part about my business. They create so much chaos, and chaos creates cash. So it's been a fun. I embrace the haters. I embrace them on BD. I embrace them on my website. I embrace them on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. That they don't understand what a great thing they do for me and my family. They're all getting me. Ooh, they're going to get me. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, get me. Here I am, 63. I'm still pretty much the guy most people talk about in the industry in Southern California. And I know you hear, did you see that video Hansen made yesterday? Oh my God, the guy has no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, okay, sure. Yep, because you've never done
Your voiceovers are entertaining. I gotta say, your voiceovers are entertaining. Yeah, we were talking about how to tie a boat to a dock. That video it's hilarious. It's just entertaining. I've tied 1,000 boats to 1,000 different docks. I still watched it because it's entertaining.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and people don't understand. Every word that's coming out of my mouth is, I'm getting a reaction for every single word. It's crazy. And I call it a rope instead of a line. How many people lost their mind over that? It's just so funny. I just think it's fun. I love to play with the haters. They're fun to play with. They're easy. They're an easy target for me. It's super fun. I have a really good time. And none of them have ever showed up at any of my seminars, any of my speaking engagements, anywhere I talk, and we post it everywhere. So if these guys were real, they would have all been there. But they're not. They're just hiding out. What I believe is there's a lot of, and this is going to piss people off that are listening, but there's a lot of guys out there that are super jealous.
Mm-hmm.
They can't quite figure out, how's that old man still relevant in this industry? This is pissing me off. I caught 13 calico bass last night on the break wall and nobody will even talk to me. This old man, he's got everybody in the world sponsoring him. What's going on? How come? He doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Well, one thing that I think is really overlooked in the sport fishing industry is like we're in the entertainment business, right? We're in the almost public service, but I mean, it really is just an entertainment business. You're not going to go out and catch fish, the trophy fish, every single time. And really, people remember a couple things: how clean your boat was, right? That's really important to any guest that comes out, I've found. And did they have a good time with you? I think that's very, very important. Is like, hey, we didn't really catch, but man, that Dave, we had a great time out on the boat. It's not about, it's not always the trophy fish. It is, for reoccurring clients or just people enjoying their day. It's their day off. They don't want to go out I've been on boats. I've worked for people that yell at customers and, breaking stuff around the boat, stomping their feet, throwing pouty sessions, whatever. And it's a different experience.
Oh yeah. And I was part of that sewer back in the 70s and 80s because that's what we were taught when we were kids. And then it's a totally different world now, and there's so many choices nowadays, and there's so many places for people to spend their money when they go fishing that you better be standing up as straight as you possibly can, and you better watch every word that comes out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people watching. The thing that blows my mind is these boats that still allow their crew members to smoke in the passenger's face. I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. It does. I'm sorry, if you're that captain that thinks it's cool, you're missing out on a big opportunity. But you do whatever you do. I don't really care what anybody does, but when I see it, I don't understand it. That's all I'm saying. I don't understand the cigarette hanging out of your mouth in the 80s was cool. That's what we all did. We all had one. We came into the dock. We always lit one up while we were getting ready to jump off the boat because it looked cool as kids. Then as we got older and we learned about all the bad things that are happening from smoking a cigarette. I can't even comprehend that I would do that to myself anymore. But I'm not taking anything away from anybody else. I know how hard it is. I smoked 2 packs a day for a very, very long time. I know it's hard to quit. And I know those little tiny cigarettes are way stronger than you are. I know that. But I don't see why people are allowing it to go on nowadays with knowing what's going on, to have a deckhand standing in front of your child's face with the cigarette hanging out of her mouth. Just blows my mind today in this industry. And then they post pictures of it on social media and go, come on our boat. The last boat I'm going to allow my friends to go on.
I remember I was a kid. I used to fish out of Dana Point all the time with my dad. And I was on a boat one time, and this guy was, it's I've been seasick 3 times in my life. This is one of them. One of them I had food poisoning. One of them I was like 12. We were albacore fishing on the lower 500, or we were way down there, and it was rough, and we're trolling for hours and hours. And when the boat stopped, I got sick. But the other time was this guy was smoking a big old cherry cigar. Just, he was out enjoying his day. But man, the smell of that, you get a little saltwater diesel in your nose. You really start spinning after a few minutes for a young guy.
Oh yeah, just gnarly. You can't get away from it either. You're stuck on the boat. So.
Yeah. It's bad enough being stuck with someone you don't like on the boat, and then they light up a giant cigar. Yeah,
it's a different world today. That's for sure. This is definitely not 1980.
Now, how did you? I know you did some lobster stuff. You were one of the founders of the kind of the hoop netting charter thing. Tell me a little bit about that.
All right. So in 2006, I was part owner of a 46-foot Bertram up in Huntington Harbor called the Liquid Coast Highway. And that year, that summertime, that yellowfin tuna was the only way you could get bit was on the dolphin pods between San Clemente Island and Catalina. And at the same time, they were taking the price of diesel back then. And it went all the way over $5 a gallon. And it was going up 10 to 12 cents a day some days. It was just the most incredible thing we'd ever seen. And we came out of the season. We couldn't charge you and your buddies enough. Like, let's just say, Drew, you chartered the boat back then for $1,200 to go yellowfin fishing. And then when you came down in the morning, my partner and I, Jeremy, would have to tell you, hey, you know what? We were only kidding. It's $1,500. You would be pissed.
Yeah.
So we couldn't charge enough because no one saw this price of this diesel going so fast. So we couldn't go and tell you. So I think we ran 5 or 6 trips that year where it actually cost us $500 or $600 to take you guys fishing, which that's not a good business plan.
Well, back then that's like $1 million, right?
Right. And so then we came out of that and we had no money. We were coming into the winter, didn't know what to do. And I was working with Phil Freeman back then at 976 Tuna, and I said, hey, I got an idea. We're going to try this. I don't know if it'll work. No one's ever done it before. I don't even know if it's even a business, but we're going to try this, Phil. Help me out. I'm going to start doing these lobster reports on your show on 976 Tuna. We're going to tell people we're going. I'm going to take 6 people, $100 a person. I'll give you all the beer you can drink and all the pizza you can eat, and 5 hours of hoop netting in Long Beach Harbor for $100.
Wow.
We started running, I think we ran 48 trips that first year, which was fine. It allowed us to pay our rent on the dock. We didn't have any money. I mean, we didn't make any money, but we didn't have to spend too much, even though we were upside down. So we came out of that, and then the next year, it rained. And we figured out that the lobsters hate fresh water, and we started catching. The first year we didn't catch any lobsters, I'll be perfectly honest with you. We didn't know what we were doing. It's just like everything. You got to figure it out. Lay of the land, start looking. And I remember we had the Whittier Elks Lodge on our boat. I had Jeff at the bait from Dana Point Bait Barge. He was my deckhand. And it's pouring down rain, and we're fishing one of the spots we fished 100 times and never caught anything. And I thought, something's different here. The first net came up with like 15 lobsters in it. And we may have caught 10 there the whole season. And the first net had 15. And I was like, oh, wow. And then every net Boom, boom, boom. They all had lobsters in it. That was the first time we caught limits of lobsters, and it was mind numbing. It was
Wow.
like we got 6 people. We got 42 lobsters. I cannot believe this. We got 42 legal lobsters. Oh my gosh. Then my wife at the time was not my wife. She was seeing somebody else. They caught the biggest lobster ever caught in California, 18 3/4 pounds.
Wow.
That got on all the news channels, ABC, NBC, because they gave it to the aquarium in Long Beach. At that time, I was promoting my hoop net trips. They were out there just winging it. They caught one lobster, and it was 18 3/4 pounds. But
Was this all in Long Beach Harbor?
yeah, that was inside
Okay.
Long Beach Harbor, and that took it. That just took the business, and now we're getting phone calls. People are understanding. There, you could go catch lobsters. Now we're running charters. We're doing stuff out of the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons. People were coming out of the woodwork to go catch lobsters with us. It was really cool. Then Long Beach Harbor has this area on my charts that show, we call it Jurassic Park. That area had been closed forever, the Navy Mole. We just happened to be there doing it that year when they opened it. And then it was 5 pound, 10 pound. I don't even know how many 10 pounders we caught that first year. We had one night we had probably 20 over 10 pounds. We had two 15 pounders and a couple of 16 pounders, and it was night after night after night, and no one knew what was going on. Nobody was really doing it back then. There was very little coverage. And then now the rest is history. Now every landing up and down the coast does it. But yeah, if you
Yeah, I
look
saw
back-
even Dana Wharf is offering hoop netting charters out front there, and they're catching them. It looks like an enjoyable night, and it's a good way for those boats to get off the dock as well.
Yeah, and that's what I've told them forever. It's not even about the lobsters. It's about being out on a boat at night, eating some nice greasy cheeseburgers, and hanging out with your bros, and pulling up hoop nets that could have an 18 pounder in it. Could have nothing in it. You don't know. That's the really cool thing about it. And people just want to get out and do stuff. I mean, you go to
Yeah.
Disneyland now, Drew, one person to get into Disneyland is like $440. And if you want to go on a ride, then it's going to cost a lot more. And they're full every single day. So that's what I've always told people is, I think there's so much potential for the sport fishing industry. People aren't really tapping into all the different things that could happen that you could do. And Dana Point, they're trying to put together this lobster thing. My sister does the best she can in the middle of the winter to try to get people to actually work on the boat. That's another big problem, is finding people that want to work anymore. People don't want to work in Southern California anymore, and they tell them, hey, we're going to go out and hoop net 2 or 3 nights this week. You start getting a big pushback, a big resistance. So it's hard. A lot of the boats that are doing it in the wintertime that are hooping, it's an owner-operator type of operation, because they understand they're leaving a bunch of money laying on the table, so they want to get out there and do it for their people. And if you get caught up on the count of the lobster, how many you caught, then you miss out. People just love every single thing that comes up. The octopus, the moray eel, the seaweed. If a piece of kelp comes up, stop. People never seen kelp. Things you and I take for granted are all stuff that they've never seen before. You tell them, this is what they made your toothpaste out of. This is what they made your shampoo out of. They're like, huh? Yeah, kelp is in every product you use every day, gang. It's a coagulant. It's what makes that conditioner or the shampoo or the ice cream, whatever makes it stick together, coagulate. That's what kelp's for. Kelp's used in millions of products every single day. People don't even know. So it's cool to stop everything and show people all the cool things that are coming over the rail. And if you're just, we didn't get a lobster in this one, and you just throw the net back over with the fish in it or whatever, you're missing out. You got to make it a bitchin' experience for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've been through that same scenario. I was kind of in that same time frame of when they opened up the port, and man, it's pretty incredible. I wish it was like that still.
You were working for Ben Alexander back then. You guys were doing that hoop net thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, it is true. Like, you pull up an eel and people, or an octopus, and they get to hold it and they freak out over it. It's such a cool thing to watch. Something we see every day, or dolphin, or, a sea lion. we're pissed to see the sea lions, but they're like, oh my gosh, look at that seal's following the boat. And
He's
you're in
so
the wheelhouse just like, oh, but they're taking photos with it and, all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's back to the entertainment value right there. The entertainment business is, these people don't get out on the water like that, and you really got to maximize it,
It's super important to know your audience. And your audience is the people that paid to come out on the boat, whether it's your boss and his family or your boss's friends they sent into town or whoever. You always have to stop for a minute and look at the group and then put the trip around the group instead of, the worst thing you could do is to have a family come on the boat that have never been fishing before and then take them bluefin fishing. You just blew it. That's not what you should have done. You should have gone to Catalina. You should have gone over there and anchored up, caught some fish, and gone home and never said the word bluefin. They don't even know what a bluefin is, but so many people blow it. They're like, we're going to go catch bluefin. They're like, okay. What? They don't understand that the boat's not going to stop anymore. We're done stopping. Well, that's not what they saw in the brochure. They saw anchored up in a beautiful cove with the sun out. And they're enjoying it. They're catching a fish. Not everybody wants to catch those stupid bluefin, gang. I'm sorry. They don't. No matter what you think, you're missing out. If you're just bluefin and that's it, that's why the season's taken so long to get rolling this year, because that bluefin bites a day or two and then it doesn't bite, and then we can't get a sport boat off the dock because everybody's got bluefin fever. I don't even know why you still have it. Why does everyone still have it? You haven't caught enough 200-pound fish that taste like crap?
Well, it's transcended into, well, I just want one over 100, or, oh, I just want one over 200. It's not, I feel bad for these 40 to 60 pound fish, which are great fish, get overlooked. Everyone's like, oh yeah, the boat got limits last night doing that knife jig thing. Oh, what size were they? 80 to 90. Yeah, I want big ones.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait.
My brain explodes thinking of, back in the day, motoring all the way down, and we catch 3 yellowtail and 2 yellowfin off a kelp patty, and you're a hero. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah.
But now you're on the Fury on a 3/4 day trip, and yeah, we only caught 30-pound bluefin. Like, it blows my mind,
Yeah, it's pretty funny, the evolution of this whole thing. And like I say on a lot of my videos, if you only like to catch tuna, then you should probably move out of Southern California. Because there's very small, like you said, let's go all the way back to what we talked about in the beginning. The window of catching a bluefin in Southern California is so tiny compared to the 12-month season that we actually have here. We have year-round fishing in Southern California, and most people don't even take advantage of it. Look at the halibut fishing this year, Drew. Historic. So bitchin', so fun. You could actually go out. If you looked at the tide and you set your day up, you went out and you fished through the tide, you had a really good chance if you knew how to put together a bait and a trap rig and drop it to the bottom and you knew what to feel like, you pretty much were guaranteed you were going to get a halibut today.
Yeah.
You could. Those days, we never saw that, me growing up. We never had a halibut fishery in Southern California where you could go and catch halibut.
Target them.
But so many people missed out on it because they only like to catch bluefin. I don't know. I'd way rather eat a nice chunk of halibut, and I'd way rather see a 30-pound halibut come up than a 200-pound bluefin, but that's just me.
Yeah, you're different. You're built different. Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. I got a nice halibut off the beach the other day. The halibut off the beach has been really good as well. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's what me and Bill were talking about. Bill Varney is my guest every Wednesday, the surf fishing guru. And the amount of halibut that surf fishermen have caught this year is pretty historic too.
Yeah. Every
day I look on our community on the website, and I just keep seeing so many posts of guys catching halibut on the beach. It's pretty cool. That's never really happened before.
When we reconnected over the last couple months, I kind of dove into your website. It's been a couple years. I was on it a couple years ago, and then getting back onto it, seeing that community side of things is pretty interesting. Seeing it's like, it's kind of surprised. It's a very positive area. A lot of good jobs. A lot of, people can post their fish report, and it's not like other websites where they're like, oh, I caught a bigger one, or, that kind of thing. and it's like real info. So I thought that was pretty cool to see that.
That's the most proudest thing I've done. That'll probably be my legacy, is like, as I drift off into the sunset, is that community that we built, which I believe will sustain whatever. My wife will run it, my kids will run it, whatever. That community was built by you guys, for you guys, with zero negativity. Where if you go on some of these other websites, you're scared to death to post anything or ask a simple question because you know you're just going to get pummeled. And it turns people off. Every part of that negativity turns people off from fishing. And that's why when I built the website, I was like, my community, first of all, I get to control it because it's a pay site, so there's a paywall behind it. So you're not going to get those guys in their underwear sitting in their mom's basement posting that garbage. Or you're not going to get the Dave Hansen haters aren't going to pay $29.99 a month to come on there and blast all of our people. So you don't have any negative, which is really cool. And then all the different people that go out and catch fish on their private boat, they want to tell people how, I'm sorry, but how easy it was to follow the game plan that Dave Hansen and his guides, which I have 4 guys that are live on the water every day, which share all our information. People ask me all the time, Dave, why don't you have more guys? More guys giving information? Because the industry doesn't give information. There is nowhere to gather information, real-time information from what's really happening from real captains that really drive boats. That doesn't happen. Yeah. You know that. To call you and say, Drew, where'd you catch your fish today? And you're like, oh, I'm not going to tell you, Dave, because you're going to tell all 5,000 of your members. And it's like, yeah, exactly. Because we want to see everybody catching fish because, gang, if you're not paying attention to what's going on right now, they're on a mission to stop fishing in the state of California, period, end of story. So if you don't understand that we're all part of the solution to not get fishing closed, if we all work together and create a community of people working together to keep this fishing thing open, there's not going to be any fishing, gang. Whether you want to believe it or not, in just the short little time that I've been on the planet, and I haven't been here very long, but I've watched phenomenal amount of stuff disappear that we'll never get to do. Those of you that are Drew's age or younger, you never got to fish Laguna Beach, California. You might have just got into it just at the very tail end. If you're Drew's age, anyone younger than Drew though, you didn't get to go to Laguna Beach, California and fish.
What year was that closure? Sorry to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I think it was like 2006, 2007. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's gone forever. It's never going to be open again. It's gone forever. There's nowhere like it on the planet. Those of you that are big time bass fishermen, that place was insane. Absolutely insane. You could throw your trolling motor in the water at Abalone Point and fish for 8 hours and never make it to Main Beach.
Wow.
That section right there from Abalone Point to Main Beach, that section right there, there's so much to fish right there. And they closed it from Abalone Point all the way to South Laguna. It's all gone forever. And it was done with zero science. At the meetings, they told us that if you close in front of Drew's house and leave, this is what Laguna was saying at these meetings. If you close the area in front of Drew's house and you leave the area in front of Dave's house open to fishing and Drew's area is closed, Drew's property value is going to skyrocket because you're not going to have those stinky fishing boats fishing in front of Drew's house. And it's like, what are you talking about? People want to, you own a beautiful house with an ocean view. How cool is it to see a boat out there? That's what the ocean's for. But the city of Laguna put that fear factor into everybody, and the whole city got up in arms and said, well, that's not going to be fair. That's not going to be right. So we didn't even know that this was about to happen, but closed door meetings, the city of Laguna Beach decided to close the whole city. That would be the only way it would be fair. And then the Fish and Wildlife said, well, we don't have the resources because we only want this little piece. to police it. The city of Laguna said we're going to put the money in an escrow account and we will police our own beach and our own fish, our own waters. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, this weekend, take your boat, take some fishing poles with no line on them, and just stick them in the rod holders on your boat and go park in front of Laguna Beach somewhere. Just go drop the anchor and have some fishing rods with no line on them sitting there and watch. You're going to get paddle boarders, you're going to get swimmers, you're going to get lifeguards, you're going to get to meet a whole bunch of cool new people. You're going to get to meet a bunch of Karens, and they're all going to come out there and tell you can't fish. And then you're going to go, well, and they're going to go, oh, you trying to be funny? Yeah, I actually just wanted to watch you paddle all the way out here. But yeah, we're not fishing. And you're like, those of you back east and stuff, you're going, no, that hasn't happened. Oh, it's the truth. Right, Drew? I'm not making this up.
And to tack on to it, why they closed Italian Gardens, that's like even the more frustrating. The closures of Catalina are the most frustrating to me, because that is one of the coolest places in Catalina, I think, is that whole section there. As
far as beautiful and just phenomenal resource, and then so many places in the gardens itself, so many spots where there could be a day where there could be 10 sport boats fishing in there, and each boat's 50 to 100 feet long, and they all had a spot, and they all had a position in there. And then you would catch yellowtail, barracuda, bonita, and bass. We can't fish in there anymore. That got closed at the same time Laguna got closed. It's a tragedy and all this stuff. But gang, listen, whatever you're posting, whatever you're saying, you're helping them close. When you say, well, Dave Hansen caught 4 calico bass yesterday and took them home and eat them, who needs that many? Okay, that just allowed the people that want to close more to go, this is going to be easy.
Yeah.
We can't even get these guys to agree on stuff that's legal. You guys will fight me tooth and nail to tell me that taking our calico bass from 12 inches to 14, there's people out there that are actually going to say that was a good thing. That was the dumbest thing we've ever done as fishermen. That was so stupid, because now you have all these little baby bass everywhere you go, eating all the food. So the big guys aren't even getting a chance. It didn't help a thing, but you know what? There's 1,000 people behind this podcast that are going, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Gang, the assessment was done with no science, and a 12-inch calico bass, they already knew it spawned 4 times by the time it was 12 inches. That was done with science. And that's when we said, okay, 12 inches, that's legitimate. That spawned 4 times. Now we're taking, let's just say you drive a sport boat. Those people that pay money to go with you, they want to catch something to take home and eat it. Calico bass taste great. They're a phenomenal food fish. But now we can't take the 12-inch ones, which are perfect sized food fish, really good for the environment, thinning out the herd, allowing the other fish to get bigger, allowing more food in the ocean for the other fish to eat. But now you have an overpopulation of these small fish, and so now we have to take, and we never took 14-inch bass when we were sport boat fishing. If it was 14, 15, 16, you threw it back. That was a breeder. Mm-hmm. You knew that. You just were like, okay, that guy's doing good. He made it through the 12-inch. He made it through 10,000 sport boats fishing for him, and he's still alive, and he deserves to live. Now, we're told that we have to take 14-inch, and we got to throw the 12-inch back. On a sport boat, if you go out on a sport boat, Drew, and you watch us throwing 12-inch bass back, you know what's happening to every one of them the minute it hits the water?
Seals.
It's getting eaten by a California sea lion. So you're not helping at all. And people go, oh, no, they don't get eaten by a sea lion. Yeah, because when the calico bass hits the water, he hesitates for a second because he's in shock, and he doesn't really know. You can see this with all the ones that Drew catches on the breakwall. When you throw him back, that blew his mind. So he doesn't know what to do. So he hesitates for a second because he's not sure. He's in the ocean or is he in the air? He doesn't really know. That hesitation, that 1,000-pound sea lion comes out from underneath the boat, grabs him, goes back underneath the boat and inhales him. and it's like they're like potato chips to the sea lion. So there's only two real problems in the ocean in California: urban runoff and the California sea lion. All the other stuff is made up. It's all make-up baloney. It's not real. The fish aren't in peril. There's no shortage of fish. There's shortage of people that know how to catch them, but there's no shortage of fish. Drew,
Yeah.
you go out and have phenomenal night after night or day after day at the same spots you've been fishing since you were a little kid, and the fish are still there. Even though Dave Hansen went there the next day and took his 15, because he had 3 people on the boat, he took 15 out of there. They're still there the next time you go. I've been fishing the spots for 50 years, and they still have fish on them.
No, you have a great point, and we're starting to see freshwater guys, like a lot of the big swim bait freshwater guys, keep some of those 2 to 3 pound largemouth bass because they're saying, hey, we don't have a lot of giant fish due to overpopulation because of it's so looked down upon to keep a largemouth bass in a lake, right? I'm starting to see a lot of guys take those 2 to 3 pound, maybe 4 pound fish in that area due to overpopulation of small fish. So and I don't have an opinion on that. I don't know enough about it to make an opinion, but it does make sense, especially at Catalina. I mean, let's say you set up in front of Frog Rock at Catalina and it's the right tide, you get that cloud of small bass behind the boat. And I mean, it's awesome to see all that stuff, but they're all 13.5-inch fish instead of being 11.5-inch fish. Now they're just all 13.5-inch fish, and you're throwing it back and the sea lion eats it, or, you're gut hooking the fish, like a fish that should be taken anyways. It's kind of like this cow cod thing, opening the depths. Like, how many of those fish are really surviving that traumatic experience?
None.
Yeah. Makes you feel better though when you put it on a descender and you don't see it float up. It does make you feel better.
Everybody feel way better. Get that warm blood, just like green energy. There's no such thing as green energy, but people love to use it. And the people that are driving electric cars, you're not doing anything. You're driving an electric car because it's cool. You're not saving anything. You're not doing anything. It's worse for the environment. The amount of rubber coming off the tires of an electric car are 10 times the amount of rubber coming off a regular car, just because of the sheer weight.
Or the 8-year-old that had to mine the cobalt for the battery.
Oh, we don't talk about that, because it's okay for the slaughter of little children to make your battery for your electric car so you can look cool. It's okay. That's okay. And then the whales, we can kill lots of whales right now for green energy, which doesn't exist. If you believe in green energy, then you believe in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, and that's fine, because you should believe in something. I just choose to believe in reality, and there's no such thing as green energy, gang. And prove me wrong. Show me one place where green energy actually exists. It doesn't. There's no such thing. But we can't. That'll be a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
Yeah. What do you think about we had these closures 2006, 2007, and then now there's this big push over the last year and a half. We've seen this push for 30-30. CCA's doing a lot of things, but I think there's definitely a lot more pushback now that we know, hey, this is what happens, and it's never coming back to the way it was. So there is a tremendous amount of pushback, but how can people get involved? What can they do to help?
You got to be involved in CCA California. You have to. Whether you believe in what we're doing or not, if you touch a fishing pole or your grandkids go fishing or something, you should all be involved. It's the only voice we have at the table. We don't have another voice. There's nobody else that's going to go to all the meetings and talk and do all the things. Because let's say Drew and I and 15 or 20 of our closest friends go to the next 30 by 30 closure that's coming up. We go to the meeting. We're going to be 40 or 50 people in that meeting that aren't getting paid. And we're going to be looking at people sitting behind tables with little cardboard things that say their name. They're all getting hundreds of thousands of dollars to be there. And we're getting nothing. We're there for one reason, so that we can go do our hobby and have fun and go catch fish. They're all sitting there trying to close something because why? Because they're all getting paid to say the nonsense that comes out of their mouth. They're getting paid. They have no science. They're paid. They're whiter than this napkin. I don't want to know what they know about the environment if they're pale, because you're not outside. You don't know what's going on in the environment. I'm sorry. Just be honest. That's why they don't let me talk in those meetings, because I don't believe in the rhetoric and the baloney. I just believe in reality and what I see every single day being out there and what our guides see. I'm going on a tangent. I just want to circle back for a second on this calico bass, sand bass, spotted bay bass. On the exact, this is why those of you that are in Drew, your guys are bass huggers to the max. I know your guys are all into bass fishing, and it's like the biggest deal. But you guys don't understand. When they took them from me, they took them from you guys too, and they're gonna. The more you allow them, and you guys get on, yeah, it's okay. Dave Hansen shouldn't be killing our fish. Those are our pets. Those are our fish. They're all of our fish, gang. And I don't disagree. If you like to injure fish all day long and injure hundreds of them and throw them all back, that's fine. That's what you'd like to do. I like to eat them. I don't like to injure them. I like to take them home and eat them. I don't like to tease them with plastic lures and tease them and then get them to eat it and then jam a hook in their face and then wind them up and hold them up for my buddy and then let them go. That's super cruel in my mind to that poor little fish. If he bit the lure, he should go home with me. That's what he wants to do. He wants to come to my house and meet Kelly and Marley and have dinner with us. But you guys are into teasing them. But I'm not going to say you're wrong and I'm right. So you shouldn't say I'm wrong and you're right, because that's not our... Every time you allow them to take one more thing from us, gang, it's one more thing none of us are going to get to do again.
Yeah.
So when you guys are like rooting them on, yeah, it's about time you close the bass. Nobody should have 10. Shut up, gang. That shouldn't be your... If you're a fisherman, you should be like, no closures, whether you like them or not. Any closure is bad for us.
Yeah.
It's never going to be good for us. I've never seen them go, okay, just like I'm sorry, I get going, Drew. And
no, keep going.
The rockfish thing you mentioned, the cowcod thing. They took away all of our spots for over 20 years. They've been closed. Then they pretended, and they got everybody so excited this year. They were like, we're going to give you all the depths. We're going to give them all back to you. Okay? Everyone's like, yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm on my podcast going, gang, look over here. Because they're going over here and they're going, we're going to open all this. And they're over here in fine print, but you can't have anything.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So you didn't give us any, you took more. As a matter of fact, they said, okay, now you can fish 600 feet or 800 feet or 1,000 feet all day, every day. You can only use 2 hooks. And then, if you catch the 2 fish that live there, that's all you can have.
Yeah. No, it's tough.
What?
The first rockfish trip I went out, we got, doubles of reds. You know, we dropped down. We had 3 people on the boat, right? Pulled up 5 reds on the first drop, and it's like caught nothing else. And it's like, okay, do we cut 1 hook off and drop 1 more to get close up our limits, or fish a live bait and try and catch a Boccaccio? Yeah, it's not what we're going for. I don't know. That was, to see an 80% closure in 2 years is pretty astounding.
Yeah, well, when I started fishing commercially, we were allowed 15 rockfish.
Wow.
15 every day. That's what we were allowed. And it's right. It's not a shortage of fish, gang. The fish stocks in the rock cod zones came back faster than anybody had ever seen them. When they did some science and they found out that the narrative they were feeding us was wrong, and then right before my father passed away, they put out this press release saying that the cow cod conservation zone had come back 20 years faster than they thought it would, and the numbers were better than anybody's ever seen ever. And we're like, oh, wow. And that was 5 years ago. And we're all excited that we're going to get... And then they waited 5 years as they drug their feet around, and they took our reds from 15 to 5 to 2. And then they finally opened the depth up, but you're not allowed to catch anything that lives there. It's just so sad. And people don't play the tapes all the way through. They don't understand that this is just another closure, another way to take more from us, another way to affect us, so that they're physically not going to close fishing, but they're going to make it financially unable to go do it. And
Yeah, no,
everybody's going to be surf fishing.
that's a perfect way to put it. It's like they're not going to say like, "Hey, you can't go fishing," but it's not going to be viable for anybody to go do it. Honestly.
It's sad to think that, and it's sad that we fight with each other all the time. And I know there's a bunch of people listening going, Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, no, all I have is experience. That's it. I don't have anything else. I just have what I've been seeing go on the ocean my whole life. And the day they took the calico sand bass and spotted bay bass all on the exact same day and told us that the sand bass are under the same devastation of the numbers as the calico bass, and then out of nowhere, way out in left field, they said, and the spotted bay bass too. And I'm like, I've taken a epic amount, like mind-numbing amount of fish out of the sea for people to take home and eat them. If I told you the number, you'd tell me I was full of crap, and that's okay. But I never took a spotted bay bass ever, not even once. I don't even know anybody that does. I don't even know anybody that does, and I know a lot of ocean guys that fish hard. I don't know anybody that's ever kept a spotted bay bass. If a spotted bay bass for us fishermen are like the sacred fish. It's a bitchin' fish. He lives in the harbors. He's made our day so many times since we were little kids. We throw out a plastic lure, we catch a spotty. We're like, caught my fish, now I can go do boat work. I can go do whatever, right? It's just the spotted bay bass we've never killed. And all of a sudden now we can't kill them. Well, we weren't doing it anyway. So what are you doing, gang? Yeah. It's just silly. And really, a 14-inch spotted bay bass that lives in Newport Bay, I don't know about you, but if he lived that long in Newport Bay, I'm not eating him.
Yeah, it's funny. I was out with Benny and fishing up in the port, kind of the same deal. And he was saying he caught a green sculpin. And I'm thinking, well, that sculpin's turning green. I don't know about eating bass out of here.
Right. But just the fact that they had to close it.
Yeah.
And that was just one more time. That's zero science. That's a control thing, gang. And no one saw it. And I stood up in so many seminars at the Fred Hall show and at the PCS show, and I was saying, gang, this can't be science. Oh, yeah, the science. I go, how can it be science if you closed all three bass on the same day at the exact same time? And one of them's migratory. One of them doesn't live here. The sand bass, he comes from Mexico, and he migrates into our waters. In 57, when they caught the first one on the first half day boat, 1957, my dad was like, he didn't even know what the thing was. He's like, what's this gray thing? And they're like, oh, that's a sand bass, Don. We used to catch those back in the 30s here. Then we had a big cycle where they weren't here. Then they came back, but they migrate up from Mexico. You cannot. The funniest thing, they're gonna get our sand bass at the end of this month. I don't know if anybody knows, but they're gonna get the sand bass. They're gonna get the sculpin because they see us catching sculpin, so they're gonna take this stuff from us, whether you want to believe it or not. And CCA is the only place you can hear about this cool stuff that's happening. They don't want you to know, but they're coming after our fish again. And what I always say is, how can you control a pelagic fish? A fish that migrates in and out of California, we don't need to put any restraints on that. That's a migratory fish. So it goes right back to the control thing. It has nothing to do with science. This is one more way for them to tell Drew, you can't go out. If I catch you smiling again, I'm going to figure out what put that smile on your face, and I'm going to take it away from you. And if you're still, no. First, I'm going to tax you. And if you can live through the taxation without representation and you're still smiling, then I'm just going to take it all away.
Yeah.
That's the mentality, gang. That's what's going on here, whether you want to believe it or not. And they just hate us.
It'll be really interesting to see. I mean, we've seen a large amount of like 4-pack, 6-pack charters open up over the last, let's say, 10 years for the bluefin offshore, great offshore fishing we've had. When that goes away, right? Which it's a cycle. Hey, maybe it lasts another year, maybe it lasts another 10 years. But when it circles back to island fishing, it's going to be an interesting time because at that time, everything's going to be shut
Closed.
down. Yeah.
Everything will be closed.
Everyone's
If
got
the
a huge boat
$7 a
payment.
gallon gas doesn't do it,
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to fish the islands with 4 people and go catch 5 calico bass that you're not allowed to keep.
For 4,200 a day.
Yeah, and poop in a bucket. I don't understand. A lot of those 4-pack charter boats are illegal also. I mean, if you don't have your DFG numbers on your boat and you don't have your commercial passenger for hire permit and you don't have your logbook and you don't have your proper insurance and you're running off a launch ramp or you're picking up on your brother's, sister's, aunt's, cousin's backyard, and that's all illegal. But
well, and the state of California makes it so hard for those guys to run a legitimate business. I feel bad for them
it's liability, bro.
I agree. I mean, but still, it's like that's the way they
You
want to
want
make
it
a
to
living.
pick up in your backyard? If you own a house with a dock,
Yeah.
and then somebody walks down the dock and trips and falls and breaks their leg? No. And
Yeah.
and the county, who's going to pick up here's the thing people don't understand. You got a little charter boat, a little Parker or something. You're picking up at a launch ramp. Someone falls. I don't know if you know California. Everybody in California wants to sue for everything. They just want to sue. So if someone falls down, walking down the dock, they're going to go after somebody. And they're going to go, well, what were you doing down there? Well, I was getting on Jimmy Joe's boat. Jimmy Joe? Who's Jimmy Joe? Oh, Jimmy Joe's Charters. Right here. It's on the internet. Jimmy Joe's Charters. And they're like, well, we can't cover that. We're not making any money off. They're not paying the county or anybody. So no one's carrying the liability insurance. So then you better have everything you own in an LLC, because the last thing the insurance companies want to do is pay a claim. And if they can get out of it by you picking up illegally off of an illegal dock, and I'm not making this stuff up, gang. This is the real. That's why landings get the 27% or the 20%, because they're carrying all the liability insurance. And everything's fine and dandy, Drew, until there's a problem. Everything's fine and dandy until there is a problem. Once there's a problem, then everyone's going to look at the industry, and then it looks horrible for you and me, because we're scumbag captains. Even though we didn't do it, we weren't involved, but it's the industry. So it's a black eye for the industry. It's a black eye for everything that we're trying so hard to fight for. So these people that are running these illegal charter boat operations, these 4-packs and 6-packs, they're not even in CCA either. They're not. They're not showing all the stuff that we need to show, and they're not turning people on to helping us keep fishing open. So I got nothing for those illegal charter boat operations. I don't like them. It doesn't do anything for us. It gives us a black eye. And there's some really good illegal charter boat operators, really good guys. And I know you can't make it doing it the right way. I know that. With the $7 a gallon fuel and the 22% to the landing and your insurance and your bait and everything. I know it's a really gnarly way to make a living. I know that.
Is there a path for them, you think? Is there something, is there a path?
Not as long as there's human beings.
Yeah.
Because people want to sue.
Yeah.
Someone has to carry the liability. Someone has to. Someone has to carry it. Like we own Dana War Sport Fishing in Dana Point. We have a phenomenal amount. Our insurance bill a year, you and I can live very, very well. Very well just on the insurance a year. Because we have hundreds of people coming down those docks every day. And every one of those people is a potential lawsuit. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in today. So, yeah, is there a way out? First, you're going to have to find somebody that's going to allow all these boats to park at their place that they're going to carry the liability for and want to do it for free.
Yeah.
You know, everyone gets all bent out of shape, and they're like, well, I can't believe they won't let me run an illegal charter here. Well, how come it's illegal? Because no one's carrying the liability insurance. Your dock that you have your boat at says right on the contract you signed, you cannot pick passengers up for hire here. And you're like, okay, so I'll just go to the launch ramp. All right? But no one's carrying the liability insurance for the launch ramp. The county doesn't want to pick that up. The city of Los Angeles doesn't want to pick that up. The city of San Diego doesn't want to pick that up. So remember, gang, when you're getting on a boat, it's all fine and dandy. You better hope that guy that's running that boat owns a whole bunch of cool stuff. Because you're going to want your leg fixed. If he sinks the boat out there and you lose everything you own, you want some recourse, some way to go back and get something. And the first thing the insurance company is going to ask you, what were you doing on the boat? And then you're going to say it was a charter. And then they're going to say, where did they pick you up at? And you're going to say, oh, I was at the Dana Point launch ramp. Ta-da, the insurance company doesn't have to pay the claim, bro. He's going to jump back, go, we're clear, boss. We're clear.
Wow.
That's the deal. So somebody needs to pick up the liability insurance. And that's why everyone gets mad at the landing owners. Like, they want 22% or 25%. But they're carrying all the liability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the parking lot. And all the other things. You're parking your cars all over the place at launch ramps and stuff. It's just whatever. I'm sorry. That's a whole different show. I don't want to.
No, it's good. It's good information. I've never looked at it that way of, the liability aspect. I mean, it makes sense why they don't want to do it. I mean, the only place I really know, like in Long Beach, Rainbow Harbor is one of the very few commercial harbors that you can, legally run out of.
But you got to give a percentage of what you're making.
Yeah, you got to give. It's lower than 20%, but when Ben and I were doing it, but the liability is huge. A lot of the fishermen, I don't know, a lot of the fishermen aren't in the best shape, and
Right.
walking down the dock can be, people that can afford a charter like that are usually older, so it is a lot of liability. Even out on the water, it's a lot of liability for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So.
You see some of these guys running charters, and you look at those boats, you're like, oh my gosh. The guy shouldn't be doing anything, let alone a charter.
Yeah. Well,
So
getting out of that a little bit. I mean, we can go down the
go
rabbit hole
somewhere
of industry forever, but maybe give us a good. Let's hear a good fishing story. Maybe a nice, good adventure you've had. Maybe transporting boats, or just a phenomenal day you've had out on the water. A memorable catch. What do you got for us?
Back, Make-A-Wish used to do a tournament in San Diego, the Make-A-Wish Tuna Challenge, and Todd Manser and I were running a couple different yachts in that, and I remember from back in the 70s and early 80s that the albacore hung out on the blue whales back then, and I had my wife on the boat at the time, and there was a blue whale outside the fleet. There was a little bit of yellowfin to catch, not much. It was really crappy fishing back then, but there was a blue whale I saw on the gyros way offshore. So I went out there and I was telling my wife about it, and I said, we used to troll right on top of their back. We would drag on the sport boat, we would drive right over the top of them, and then, because we didn't have sonars back then, and then you'd get a jig strike and catch a handful of albacore. And we're pulling up on this thing, and I'm in the tower, and I look down, and on its tail, when it would flap its tail, you would see the albacore come out from under the tail and go back in, and no one had caught any albacore.
Wow.
So we threw out a couple of feathers, and our first pass by, Kelly got her first albacore, 32 pounds. And then we got 2 more albacore. I called Todd Manser up because he had anchovies for bait, which is very rare. And he came out there, and he had a bait stop for 7. And then, so that probably recent, that was probably one of the coolest things that I had seen in a very long time, and that I got able to put the puzzle together while my wife was there on the boat with us. Was pretty cool. Then I had a day in 2018 where we were way offshore, like outside the 425, just looking around. The fleet was inside on the 425. We were probably 8-12 miles outside of them. And here's this humpback whale, middle of the summer. Water was 75 degrees, and there's a humpback in the middle of nowhere. And I'm telling my boss at the time, I go, last time I fished a whale out here, we caught some albacore on it. I'm going to go over and just see if there's anything on this humpback. And we had a sonar on the boat at the time, and we were probably 300, 400 feet away from it. And the sonar hit the tail wake, and it had a ton of other targets all around the tail wake as the sonar went. I was like, holy moly. Sean Morgan was my deckhand. I went right up to the thing's tail and pitched the boat sideways, and Sean started brailing. And I handed it off to the Excalibur and to the Top Gun 80. They both got limits off it. We got limits off it. Straight big yellowfin tuna and skipjack, wide
No
open
way.
as it can be on a humpback whale. So that was a pretty cool event. And then my fishing in Adolfo's Lopez Mateos, I do it now 4 or 5 times a year. That place is just magical. There's nothing like it that I've ever seen anywhere. The mangroves go for hundreds of miles.
Wow.
Powdered sugar sand beaches and fun snook fishing, stuff like that. I'm way into doing that now. That's kind of the cool thing for me to do, because it's just like calico bass fishing, which I miss more than anything, fishing those mangrove roots up there, Adolfo's Lopez Mateo, and you can go down a different channel every day for the rest of your life and never go down the same channel.
How getting to Lopez, what does that transportation look like? Do you fly in? Where do you fly into?
You can fly into Loretto.
Mm-hmm.
It's an easy flight, hour and 45-minute flight from San Diego or LA. You fly into Loretto, and then the van picks you up and drives you over the hill. It's a 1-hour drive from Loretto to Adolfo Lopez Mateos, which is on the Pacific side, and it's the middle of what everyone calls Mag Bay. It is dead center, downtown, hometown, and there's a handful of Airbnbs there. There's nothing.
Yeah.
When it gets dark, it's over. There's no nightlife. There's no bars. It's not Cabo where I live. It's not that. It's dirt. It's fishing. It's oyster farms. It's clams. It's lobsters. It's just fishing. And when the sun goes down, you go to sleep because you're dead ass tired from fishing all day out there, because it's magical. But it's an easy flight from LA, San Diego, Alaskan, flies right to Loretto. You jump on, and then you just tell you're coming, and they pick you up, take you to the Airbnb. They're nice little houses. I think $120 a night per person or something like that. It's still, there's no deals anymore in Mexico. We have the same inflation you guys have, so
Yeah.
all the deals are gone. In the 5 years that Kelly and I have lived here, the price of living down here has gone up 60%.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Here too. All right. Well, Dave, real quick before we wrap this up, like, where can people find your website?
So my website is called Your Saltwater Guide. You go to www.yoursaltwaterguide.com. But better than all that, gang, my commitment to everybody is all you have to, my phone number is everywhere. I'm not afraid to put it out there. I don't care. Call me anytime you want. 949-374-0786. I'll give you an absolute free look. You don't have to put your credit card in or anything. I want you to see what this website's all about. I want you to see all the great things, the thousands of spots that we give you, the game plans that come out every Thursday at 3:30 in the afternoon, so you don't have to suck on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when you go fishing, or you don't have to go find Drew and follow him around and try to get a scrap off the back of his boat.
Don't follow me. We're not catching them.
We teach you how to fish for fish and stop fishing for boats. And 580 how-to videos, my podcast on there every day. There's just a plethora of information. You just check it out. You can either sign up on your own at yoursaltwaterguide.com, or you can give me a call at 949-374-0786. I'll give you an absolute free look. Can't beat that. Free is free.
Yeah, there's a ton of information. I mean, from fishing Catalina, fishing the coast, it's a great resource for even if you've done it your whole life or you've done it for 10 years. Go check it out. I think it's extremely helpful.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate that.
It's hard to beat.
You've been on there for a long time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dave, for coming on, and we'll catch up with you in a bit here and see what you're up to.
Thank you so much for having me on here. Hopefully we talked about some stuff that matters to people, and a lot of people watch this. And keep following Drew's Bait Tank podcast, gang. There's so much cool stuff on here. He brings in a lot of great guests. He had one of my friends on here. That's what turned me on to this. That's what got me involved and got me to come over and check out what he's doing. So I invite all of my members to go check him out and check out his podcast. And Drew, thanks for letting me be a guest today.
Of course, Dave. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, take care.